What are you drinking, Adam?
Well, John, I'm here drinking a Sierra Nevada IPA. Celebration Fresh Hop. Got a little log cabin on it with snow that makes me think a little bit of the Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
Feels like there's some horrific gun violence happening inside those otherwise serene windows.
Yeah.
But the important thing about this beer is that it is a holiday beer. It comes in a nice red and yellow package that makes you think of being cozy with your family, watching some fall movies. What are you drinking today?
Yeah. I'm drinking the Greater Pumpkin. It's from a Heavy Seas beer in Baltimore, and it's described on the bottle as pumpkin ale brewed with pumpkin and spices, aged in bourbon barrels. Now, I've actually had this before, and I know for a fact that it tastes very strongly of bourbon, which I'm not a huge bourbon fan, but the bottle looks cool.
The bottle does look cool. I have a question.
Yeah.
When you got a hold of this beer, did you have to like fend off John Waters to get your hands on it? Did he appear from the shadows of a Baltimore alleyway?
Yeah, I was at my local grocery store, and he had an assistant there to try to snatch them away from me, but I nimbly scanned them in like a ballet dance style. Just scanned them through the aisle, threw cash into the hands of this poor employee, like $100 to make sure I covered it.
Did his assistant try to make you eat a turd?
He tried throwing turds at me, but luckily I dodged all of them.
Nice.
So
nice.
I didn't dodge the cum
That's
though.
cool. Well, that's hard to do.
Yeah, it's tough.
The point is, John Waters approved.
That's true. Yeah.
So, what do our beers have in common, John? Why are we drinking these beers?
Well, both of them are holiday themed for one, but both of them relate to the colder seasons, specifically fall.
Yes.
Which is why we're here. We're here in celebration of fall to talk about 5 fall movies that we have decided on and 2 other honorable mentions.
It's October and November kind of a podcast episode, and
yes,
those are the beers that we are drinking.
Yeah, technically, if you want to get precise, fall happens from the end of September to the end of December, but we are not scientists, we are spiritual beings. So we were talking what the true season of fall is.
Yeah. Do you want, before we get into it, or we can save this to the end, either one is fine, you can just cut it out if you want to. Do we want to talk about first a little bit, like, the different kinds of fallness in media?
Yes.
Because I think that was kind of the genesis of this idea for an episode, is that we had a few conversations about how, like, there are different ways for, like, an album or a movie to be sort of like a fall-themed piece of work.
Yes, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts more on the music, because I know that's something you are more familiar with than I am.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, there's at least, like, 4 that I can think of, specific fall vibes that we can discuss.
Yeah, what are those 4?
So, definitely you got the cozy vibes of, like, academia. You know, you're in your hoodie or your sweater,
A turtleneck.
Yes, and you're like got warm colors, and you're in like a coffee shop or something. It's like an old warm coffee shop where you can see the leaves outside the cobblestone steps. It's just like a nice warm cozy vibe. Another one would be like Harvest specifically is one that I associate a lot with the month. Like, not film that's not on any, at least not on any of my lists. It's Days of Heaven kind of gives that vibe a little bit, where it's like just golden hour, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Halloween season, very particular to fall. And then finally late fall, where the leaves have all fallen and it's just like barren trees.
Yeah.
Those are 4 specific ones that I can think of.
Yeah.
What else do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I like that list too. I think, like, parallel to us putting together this list of movies, I was listening to some albums and trying to figure out, like, what seems to be commonalities across things that people recommend as fall themed, because, like, absent just like explicitly like Halloween related imagery or like, I don't know, something, or like the explicitly late fall stuff, like especially in an album where you have less of like the visuals to cue you on to like when something was made or what to associate it with. It's just interesting to me to think about why people would pick a season that specific sounds might suggest. But I do feel like, at least in the world of music, and I think it's actually true for like a lot of the movies we picked, for a lot of people, fall is like, it's introspective, right? It's like,
yes,
it's there's often a dark undercurrent that's not always explicitly expressed. So like you got Halloween, obviously, but also just like, I think symbolically as this season that's like, things are starting to decay, there's like always kind of like maybe a sardonic or like sarcastic undercurrent to at least the movies that we have on this list. I think musically it'll manifest maybe a little bit less sarcastically and a little bit more just like depressively. Like a lot of fall albums they'll be introspective, they'll be a little bit depressing, they'll usually be kind of complicated. So like there's a lot of like guitar or even rap albums that are considered like fall or recommended in fall conversations, and they're usually like very technically proficient, I've noticed as well. So I think those are just kind of some things, like a sense of like introspection, a negativeness, like a shadow. But then I would also say too, like an overt prettiness that kind of like clashes with those things can also be a fall vibe as well. Because obviously there's the visual aspect of it that people identify with the leaves, but then there's also like the emotional side to it as well.
Yeah, I agree. Sort of like the other side of it, like a Hallmark vibe a little bit. I kind of associate Hallmark both with like fall and winter, just because it kind of like has that like cozy, beautiful side to it.
Yeah, there is, like you mentioned harvest. I think that's a piece of it too. There's like a sense of fall is close to the holiday season, and so there's like that and harvest both imply like a sense of communalness that I think goes into some of the coziness or the folksiness maybe of fall vibes music and fall vibes films. But it's worth clarifying too, like, so we have this list. Only one of these is an overt horror movie, I think.
Yeah.
And none of them are Halloween movies, per se.
One of them is a Halloween movie, actually.
That's fair.
But it's not the horror movie.
Yeah.
This one, so I think technically there are two, but there's only one that's like really like extreme.
Which I bring up just to say, well, first of all, we should clarify our methods on this.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different than past podcast episodes where it's two separate lists. We collaborated to sort of put our heads together and identify sort of archetypal examples of different types of fallness or autumnalness in movies. But I also just wanted to say that like this is not just a list of like horror films that you could watch in October.
Yeah.
Because there is something autumnal about, I guess, a lot of horror films because you might associate them with Halloween. That's not what this list is, though. This is more just like trying to get outside of Halloween and just try and find movies that, both in terms of look and feel, sort of match the season.
I agree. There's one Halloween movie on this list, but besides that, we decided to like keep it more less Halloween vibe. You know, the two horror films we have. I mean, you could watch them in October, but they're not Halloween specific and kind of tend to be more about two other sides of that spectrum.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, what's your first honorable mention? Or your only honorable mention?
My only honorable mention. You scared me there for a second.
We have one each.
Yeah. So I did include this in part because I think it is a good counter to some of the other things we have on the list, but also is kind of like a unique example of what it is, which is Hell House LLC. I decided to include this as my honorable mention. Nice. I want to say at the top that this is a movie that I enjoy, even though I don't think it's like extremely good. I think it's fine. I think it's fun, but like I just really connect with the vibes of this movie more so than I like necessarily think it has a ton of objective value. But I wanted to include Hell House LLC primarily because I think it's such a great Halloween movie, like a Halloween specific movie. Like it's not just horror. It's not just like things happening in fall. It's about people building a haunted house in Pennsylvania in the fall so that they can scare people on Halloween. And that's just like, it just hits all the beats of what you want out of an October 31st film. It's got a cast of characters who are kind of annoying, terrible 2000s people to a certain extent, but they're also distinguished enough that they're interesting, which I think is something that like maybe B-quality horror movies often lack, where it's just like the cast is just a bunch of people to get slaughtered. It's like, no, these are like all very distinct and interesting characters. But yeah, it's a found footage horror movie that takes place in my own native Pennsylvania. I've actually been to it's called the Abaddon Hotel in the movie. I forget the name in real life.
I don't know. I haven't been there.
But it's a real house. It's a real location that actually does like tourist stuff of some kind. I don't know if it's exactly a motel. I think they turn it into like a haunted house in fall. But yeah, it's just a fun sort of like it's a group dynamic that's kind of interesting. And I think the found footage visuals of like building a haunted house are really, it's an interesting two things to bring together, and kind of solves that problem that a lot of found footage has. Sort of solves the problem of like, why are you still filming? Because they're like trying to make a documentary of like building this haunted house, and then there's like supposed to be like emergency footage from emergency responders and things like that, and so it's like has a decently immersive answer to some of those questions that you get when you pull up found footage.
Yeah, I remember we watched this. It must have been 2 Halloweens ago when we were still living in that apartment, and I remember liking it. If you don't like found footage, you won't like it. But if you're open to that, or if you just want a solid Halloween film to watch, this is actually a pretty solid choice in my opinion.
Yeah, and I just like that at the end of the day, like it feels like a Halloween film without kind of hitting some of the overly obvious visual beats that you might get with a Halloween film. Like there is not like an excess of jack-o'-lanterns or like an obligatory scene where everybody's putting on their costume or something. It's like, no, it's just like, it's about initially like this business venture of like trying to make a haunted house work, and then something supernatural coming along, and the spooky things make things go awry. I just think that's a fun dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a pretty good movie. I like that one.
How about you? What's your honorable mention?
So my honorable mention is Cries and Whispers. It's from 1972, and it was directed by Ingmar Bergman. This is the only Bergman film that you have to watch in color or it won't work. This is because he said that you could kind of think of all his films in monochrome except for this one. And there's a quote that he described why he described why that you need to see it in color. This is the best explanation I can give. When I was a child, I imagined the soul to be a dragon, a shadow floating in the air like blue smoke, a huge winged creature, half bird, half fish. But inside the dragon, everything was red. And this movie is extremely red. Like the interiors of the house, the most red movie you've ever seen. And that kind of symbolizes the inside of the soul, or like kind of going into the interior parts of the soul. But besides that, it's also just a film about death, as all Bergman films are. It's about a woman who's dying of like a chronic illness, and she has 2 sisters who are helping, and a nurse who is also helping, and to some degree it's about like loneliness and like broken like familial relationships and that sort of thing. It's a film that mostly takes place indoors and doesn't really involve the fall all that much, but whenever they show an exterior, it is like a beautiful Swedish fall like day, so I kind of want to include it on that. But it's obviously very depressing, as all Bergman films are. But this, in my opinion, I rewatched this recently and was very surprised that I liked it as much. So I'm going to recommend it.
Yeah.
Sweet. So let's start with the first movie on our list. So this one is The Trouble with Harry. It's directed by Alfred Hitchcock. Came out in 1955. And I think I just watched this for the first time recently. And it's not a thriller. Like, it's very lighthearted. It's very
so true.
It's very much a comedy, but it also plays with Alfred Hitchcock's themes very well, of like people who are like who are paranoid about being caught, people who don't trust the police, that sort of thing, like crime, that sort of vibe. And what he does is he sets this in like this small rural town in Vermont, which is like barely a town. It's like got like a church and like 2 other buildings, and then like some around outside the house and stuff, you know. So it's like a very small, almost Twin Peaksy town, although it's like very anti-Twin Peaks in the story. So it's very fun how he has this like comedic, pastoral film and setting, and these characters are all kind of silly and lighthearted, but he's also able to inject his macabre sensibilities into it really effectively.
Yeah. We were joking that it felt like the anti-Twin Peaks, because much like Twin Peaks, this movie starts out with people finding a body, and a lot of the movie revolves around people's reactions to that body, and it's sort of a beautiful kind of fall vibe piece of film, and it takes place on a state close to an American coast.
Yes.
But it's like the polar opposite, because everybody's reactions to finding the body are, it's just like they're barely even interested in it.
Yeah.
It's a distraction at most.
Yeah, they're more so bothered by the fact that they could be incriminated in relation to the body than the fact that someone has died, you know. Because Twin Peaks, the first episode, is like basically this requiem where everyone is crying. It's like trying to sell the point that Laura's death is a huge deal, and really like caused these people a lot of grief, and it's like this hole is in their community now.
Whereas this guy, the characters mostly don't even know him or are happy that he's gone.
Yeah, the only people who know him is Shirley MacLaine's character, it's her wife or her husband, excuse me. It's her husband, and she's just kind of like didn't care. She was like trying to run from him, and now he's dead. She doesn't like no grief for him. No,
she was on the
crying.
run.
Yeah, they even just like when they bury him, they're like, should we like say any prayers? And they're like, no, we'll skip those. So it's like, yeah, Twin Peaks is about how people are inherently good. This one is about how people are inherently dirty or a little bit. They're a little bit nasty, maybe, or they just don't care about anything outside of their community.
Yeah. I've seen some Hitchcock. I can't count off the top of my head, but probably like 5 or 6. You've seen more than I have.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that this is the slowest Hitchcock film?
Maybe. I mean, it doesn't... So the thing about Hitchcock is that... Well, no, because his silent films are way slower. But of his like his normal movies, I guess.
Yeah.
Like his normal, like... The ones that your average person wants to see. I guess I would say it's slower than the others. It's more ambling. It's not like trying to ratchet up the pace like a thriller would. It's just kind of like floating along and just kind of like bumbling amusingly at these characters. Yeah. So I guess that's a fair thing to say.
Okay. Yeah, because it's like on rewatch, a couple things struck me that I didn't necessarily remember from the first viewing. One was just that it was a lot funnier than I remembered it being, which we can maybe go into in a second.
Yeah.
But the second was that it felt not... It walks right up to the line of being too slow for me. But it doesn't quite cross that because the visuals are so pretty most of the time, and the tone is so, like, rural, and just, like, yeah, like, this is such an obvious, like, backwater, like... Or not exactly a backwater, but just, like, an isolated, like, sleepy place.
Yeah, it feels very isolated.
Yeah, like, the term ambling is a great way to describe the pace, because it's, like... It's a movie that wants you to slow down to enjoy it, for sure. And I actually think that contributes to what makes it kind of a fall movie. Even though the visuals are very obviously fall-oriented, this was shot actually just after peak leaf season in autumn in New England, which we can get into.
Yes.
But visually, you got all these beautiful colored leaves on the trees, etc., etc. But it's not just that. It's also, like, the pace is very... It feels like something you could put on right next to a burning fire and just kind of, you know, kick your feet up and sort of enjoy the holidays watching this black comedy.
Yeah, I'm not going to exactly call it reflective, but it does have that slowness that reflective has, or that maybe that gradualness, where it's not like we have to rush to the end. It's something where you can, like, it honestly feels like Vermont a little bit. It's just like it's like a more rural place where people are more laid back and people are more friendly. Well, friendly, yeah. And people are just like, you know...
Not necessarily virtuous, but friendly to each other.
Exactly, yeah. And it's just like a more chill pace of life. I was just in Vermont earlier this year. It was in summer, but it still had that, like, charm to it. So, there is a lot of charm, despite the fact that the characters are not bothered by death.
Well, that's part of the, like, humor of the movie, is that the characters are all so incredibly polite to each other at all times.
Yeah.
But they also just do not care about this man's murder. It is not in any way emotionally or morally concerning to them.
Yeah.
Only the consequences are interesting. Which I think, to what you were saying earlier, kind of illustrates, like, I think what Hitchcock is trying to say is, like, man can be civilized and still be extremely self-centered and, like, uncharitable or unconcerned about someone else's well-being.
Yeah, that sounds... So the thing about Hitchcock is that he has a cynical side to him a little bit. I was telling you this last night about this story, but something that feeds into Hitchcock's filmography is that when he was a little kid, he was particularly naughty one day, and his dad decided he wanted to teach this kid a lesson. So he rolls up to the constable and says, "I want you to arrest my son and lock him up for 5 minutes to teach him a lesson." And the constable did this. And these were the longest 5 minutes of Hitchcock's life. And you could see that just general distrust of law enforcement and general, like, paranoia seeping through all his movies, including this one.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that the law enforcement officer in this movie is bad. Like, he's not, like... There's no, like, police brutality, really. It's more just, like, a mechanism that doesn't function right. Or it's just, like... He recognizes that the police officer is supposed to do this job, but there's still that paranoia to it.
Yeah.
He always, like, is interested in that paranoia of, like, being caught or, like, why do they suspect me? You know?
It seems like both with this and then certainly with Vertigo and maybe also like even Rope to a certain extent, a lot of his movies are concerned with guilt in the sense of like whether or not someone should legitimately feel guilt about something. Like a lot of guilt related art usually just takes for granted that the guilt has some level of legitimateness to it, whereas with like those three movies it feels more like in different ways there are characters like grappling with like, should I even feel guilty about something happening, like, which probably relates in some way to the horrible Freudian consequences of being incarcerated by your father.
Yeah, as like a little kid.
Yeah.
Definitely. Talk about the leaves in this movie.
I was just gonna say
that. Yeah.
We alluded, and I should be fact checked on this. I'm fairly certain that this is true. My understanding is that while shooting The Trouble with Harry, Hitchcock and crew arrived a little bit after peak leaf season in New England, and so they were much disconcerted to find that most of the leaves had already fallen off the trees by the time they got there. But Hitchcock, never one to be deterred, dedicated the crew to gluing a bunch of leaves back onto all the trees. So in most of the shots, the leaves you were seeing are not actually on the trees naturally. They have been picked off the ground and glued back to the branches.
That's
the environmental consequences of which are interesting to contemplate.
Yes.
They probably killed a bunch of trees doing that.
Yeah, but if cinema.
It's cinema.
It's a movie that now exists, so.
And I was trying to watch it this time to see if I noticed anything that looked kind of off, and I didn't really see anything. There are a couple trees, though, where the leaves do look like kind of like an odd color to still be on the tree, maybe. So I don't know. Maybe I was just reading that into it. It's not super obvious. It doesn't really take you out of the movie to know that story.
Yeah, it's a better effect than the Day for Night in this movie. But
yeah, there is some really bad Day for Night in this.
Yeah.
There's also some really kind of weird editing decisions.
Yeah, he'll like fade to black. He'll pass time by fading to black and then fading back into the next shot instead of like fading into the next shot naturally.
Yes.
But
he does it abruptly.
Yeah, he does it fairly abruptly. The first time it happened, we thought it was like a commercial break that had been taken out, or like because we rented this on like YouTube TV or something, and like
you didn't watch the 35mm print.
Yeah, I know. Fuck me. Sorry, Tarantino. But
you didn't really see the film.
Yeah, John. We didn't watch it. We saw like an aborted version.
You think you've seen the film, but you've been cheated.
But it's the point is we thought that maybe it kind of felt like an ad break had been like inserted there, and then the ad wasn't there because we bought it. So.
But I don't think that's what it was. I think it was just a genuinely kind of like jarring editing choice.
Yeah,
it's not maybe Hitchcock's most technically proficient film, but I think most of its virtues do make up for its weak points.
Yeah, I'm not totally bothered by the editing. Or like the Day for Night's a little bit harder, but I mean, a lot of films from the time had bad Day for Night, so I can't be too. I can forgive it a little bit, for the time.
Yeah. So I think to maybe sum up, like, what is autumnal about The Trouble with Harry? There's the obvious, just like visual element of like pretty fall leaves. That's an important part of fall, and you're going to get that out of this film for sure. But then I think on a deeper level, just a certain cynicism and a certain coziness at the same time. Yeah. Maybe that's a good way to put it, because I think that's true of some other films on this list as well. A certain juxtaposition of like cynicism or the macabre with something that feels kind of comfy cozy at the same time. There's something autumnal about that.
I agree. Also, New England is so beautiful in the fall, so obviously you gotta include a fall movie that's set in New England. It just makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, totally.
Our next fall film is Symptoms from 1974, directed by Jose Ramon Larraz? Not quite sure if I've pronounced his last name correctly.
Jose Ramon Larraz.
They got the double R, so it's probably like technically a roll.
Larraz.
Yeah.
There you go.
There it is.
He's a Spanish director. So this is a British film by a Spaniard. So you actually saw, this is something I saw recently, and you'd seen it long before. You'd seen some interesting info about his past, basically, or his other films.
Well, yeah. So there's a lot of interesting lore about how this movie got made. So, and I don't necessarily have it in front of me, so I'm not going to probably get all the details exactly precise. But my understanding is that Symptoms was produced by a man who is the heir, or was the heir, to the Smurf fortune.
Yeah.
And had Smurf money lying around. And he got connected to Larraz, who is, there's only one way to say this, a porn director.
Basically a pornographer.
He's a pornographer, essentially. And for whatever reason, magic just happened, and they decided to make this a serious film for Larraz.
Exactly.
Not without its sexuality, to be sure.
Of course.
But in a lot of ways, like, very visually competent. And it's kind of it's not like the guy from fucking Boogie Nights who thinks he's making the art film but really isn't.
Yeah.
This is like there's something seedy about it, definitely, but it's not incomprehensible that it was submitted to Cannes.
Yeah, it was the British entry to Cannes.
Yeah, it's understandable how it could get to that point. There's something definitely very like abstract and arty about it. And as far as we know, this is the only film like this that Larraz made.
Yeah.
I guess perhaps because he lost the Smurf family partnership. It's tough to say.
Yeah, my impression. Yeah, so there's like only 2 other movies I know by Larraz are Vampires, which came out the same year as Symptoms, which is 1974. It's a lesbian vampire movie.
Uh-huh.
And the other one, because I remember the title, was And Give Us Our Daily Sex.
Yeah.
So, give you an idea of the kind of individual we're talking about.
Good shit.
Which makes it all the more surprising that Symptoms is not pornographic at all. Or there's not even sex in it. There's a sexual theme to it, but there's no sex scene. And the only, like, nudity is this one brief shot of, like, someone changing clothes.
Yep.
So there's nothing like super erotic or like X-rated about this.
Yeah.
It's just basically a straight like art house horror movie. But the film is basically about these 2 women who go to this secluded house, or I guess a mansion in the countryside of the UK. And one of them, she's like clearly a little bit disturbed. She's very frail looking. She's played by Angela Pleasance, she is the daughter of Donald Pleasance.
Another strange connection to this movie.
Yeah, for all you Halloween fans, Donald Pleasance's daughter is in this. Basically, it's about the unraveling of her mind, and how her friend is like trying to like keep her company, but eventually just spirals out of control. And there's suggestions of, I won't say literal ghosts necessarily, but ghosts from the past that haunt the house to some degree. I'm not necessarily saying they're literal ghosts, although they could be. I think the impression is they could be, but it's more just like there's something from her past that is making her go down this way.
Yeah.
So it's basically like a psychological horror film, but it's potentially a ghost story. Because I was watching or listening to a podcast about this, and they were talking about like, you know, there's that scene in the attic, how the friend can hear the sounds in the attic, kind of indicates that this is possibly a ghost instead of just like psychological horror. But it's also clearly like a repressed like lesbian element to it, because she has visions of this one lady who's apparently the ghost, who is making out with the greenskeepers, who's this like creepy old man, and there's a clear element of jealousy to it.
Yeah. I really enjoy the gothic nature of this movie. I think it's one of the strongest aspects of it. It's a classic, gothic horror setup to have someone retreat to a big old house in the English countryside where something ambiguously ghoulish is trapped in the attic.
Yeah.
And that's what this delivers, and it's like, it's on the nose in a good way. Where it really just has that lingering, slow kind of dread that never gets too excessively graphic, and is more about the like chilly ominousness of this presence. But you've also got the setting in this wonderful English countryside.
Yeah.
As far as I know, no leaves were glued back onto these trees. They caught it at the right time.
Yeah. And
it's very yellow. The whole film, they do a good job of, even when they're not filming the very yellow forest around the place, getting yellow into other shots. And like a clear color theme, which is great. Yeah,
the interiors, like, clothes they wear is very yellow and stuff. I mean, it's also rainy and gray, but... Yeah, they definitely do a good job of that.
Yeah, which I think creates an interesting... It's very pretty, but there's also something very sickly about the way the movie looks when you kind of contrast the raininess with the yellow. It's like almost a jaundice a little bit, which works very well for the tone.
Yeah, it's also... I'm not going to it's a decay. There's an element of decay to it. Mm-hmm. The house itself is not decayed. Like, it's not like Dracula's castle where it's like where it's borderline ruined, or like it should be condemned.
There aren't like comically large cobwebs or anything.
No, it's like a livable house that's actually would be nice to live in. Mm-hmm. But there is still this element of decay, obviously with her mind just like falling apart, but also just like a sickly like gray yellow vibe to the whole thing, and that's also augmented by the fall setting. Autumn is the time when everything falls. You know, they call it fall for a reason.
Yeah.
So it definitely taps into that element.
Yeah.
I actually like the element. They basically only visit like certain rooms in the house because Angela Pleasant's character won't go into other rooms. So there's like very few rooms that you actually see in the house. I actually kind of like that because it makes it feel more confined, or like it makes it easier to remember like the mise en scène of the house. So I kind of like that like world building detail.
I was just gonna say something similar, in that this movie it does something that it doesn't happen enough in movies, and I don't always understand why. They don't have a huge budget, and they solve that by just making use of a location and like accepting the location for what it is.
Yeah.
Which actually works really well if you just can bring yourself to do that in a film.
Yeah.
And having just gotten back from a trip to Europe, this whole, both the house and the shots of the town when she goes into it, everything feels so European in a very like authentic way.
It's very British.
You can tell this is just like a British town that they're shooting in, a British countryside manor that they're shooting in. They haven't changed a ton, I don't think, to make this, and that really helps with the mise en scène. You really are just kind of like absorbed into this woman's torment.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't need. I think sometimes films with smaller budgets feel the need to compensate by like either trying to show you a lot of different things, or like maybe trying to make a lot of changes that then become obvious to the stuff that's available to them. It's like, no, you gotta, if you don't have a lot of money, you gotta work with what you have and make something out of that. I don't know, maybe working in the porn industry taught Larraz how to do that well, but
it's so successful here.
Yeah, it is.
It really does. I wouldn't say this jump scare heavy, like it's more just atmosphere. That said, it is fairly creepy. Now, while I was watching this film, this is the first time I was watching it, I drank one of these Greater Pumpkins while doing it, and I got a little bit, let's just say, under the influence of the devil's juice, so to speak. And so when the creepy scenes come up, they have this dreamlike creepy quality where it's like, I guess spoilers, she kills her friend about halfway through the movie, and she just leaves the body in this chair in her bedroom, which is one is kind of disturbing. Two is that it has this pale face that gets just paler by like the day, and it's just like this ghostly like look, and it's like really, really creepy. Yeah. So like the creepy imagery in this is satisfying. I do know some people like complain about it being too slow. I think people need to get off TikTok more often, personally, but like I think it just is more of like an atmosphere ominous thing, and I think it sells that very well.
I agree. There's not, ironically, given the psychological aspect to it, there's not a ton to like psychoanalyze thematically. Like, it's pretty much enough to say it's a movie about repression.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it goes a ton deeper than that, but I don't really want it to. Like, at the end of the day, I'm mostly watching it because I just love the visual style of it. I love the use of color, the atmosphere, the gloominess of it. And it does that stuff in a consistent and understated way that's kind of hard to find. And it kind of has like the grainy seediness of like a giallo without the erraticness at all. It's if you kind of captured that vibe, but then just like really sat in a location or a particular setting in a giallo, and you kind of get a sense for what this is like.
Yeah, great movie. You should check it out, especially early fall, in my opinion. Yeah, I think it does early fall very well.
Yeah.
Alright, so our next film is a holiday-themed film for Halloween. It's a black comedy called Arsenic and Old Lace. Came out in 1944. It's by Frank Capra. This is the same guy who made It's a Wonderful Life, which I know you've all seen. This one maybe is a little less popular, but I think it's honestly either just as good or like almost just as good as that one, in my opinion. It stars Cary Grant about this guy who's written hundreds of pages on why the institution of marriage sucks, and it starts with this scene of him getting married. So he's like hiding from the journalists, and he's trying to like elope in this like secret way, and eventually he does, and they go home to his aunts. And on his wedding night, he finds out that his two aunts are murderers, basically. They're like mass murderers.
It's not good.
Yeah, they basically are like these sweet old ladies who jollily talk about how they poisoned this elderberry wine and gave it to these poor men and then murdered them all. And
specifically, they prey on, because they run a boarding house, and they prey on old men who tell them that they have no family and seem to be unhappy in life. And so, as they explain to Cary Grant, they really view themselves as doing a favor to these gentlemen by putting them out of their misery.
Exactly. And, being a normal person, Cary Grant goes through the 5 stages of grief in about 30 seconds. And one of the best, like, performances of the 40s, in my opinion. It's just, like, it's such a rapid-fire thing, but it's just like this kind of absurd, like silly, macabre representation of death. It's also set on Halloween night, so it fits the Halloween setting, but it kind of unravels. Like you have police coming over, and then eventually Cary Grant's long lost brother shows up with his plastic surgeon friend, and they decide they're going to take up residence in the house. And the aunts are extremely bothered by them. They seem to be a little bit afraid of them. Especially the brother whose face has been molded to look like Boris Karloff for whatever reason,
which they make a point of a lot in the movie.
And then you've also got like Mortimer's wife, who's like being put out. Basically, she's like wants to know why she's being ignored, and he's trying to hide this from her. And then you have this guy who's like thinks he's Teddy Roosevelt living upstairs, and Mortimer's trying to get him to be put in an institution. So it's just like this horrible nightmare of all these personalities like clashing and stuff.
It's a very strange movie. I think you like it a little bit more than I do, and I want to take this as an opportunity to like delve into what speaks to you about Arsenic and Old Lace.
Okay.
Because it was originally a stage play. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. That came before the movie.
Correct. You can tell this was originally a stage play. Like it's shot in such a way, like it's shot mainly in one house, and there's another house out here. So like that is fair. It does feel like a stage play.
Well, that's not necessarily a criticism either. I would just be curious because I've never seen, like, I know people still do performances of it quite frequently. I've never seen one of those. It'd be interesting to know how much the screwball sense of comedy comes from Frank Capra versus the source material itself. Because the thing I found most, I won't say off-putting because it wasn't off-putting necessarily. It was just, like, perpetually surprising or, like, difficult for me to interact with was, like, the style of humor, particularly of Cary Grant's performance, is just like very odd. I don't know. It's a very odd performance.
Yeah.
It's very facial.
Yeah.
He's making like almost like cartoon character faces all of the time, like comically overreacting to everything.
Yeah.
Like your joke about him going through the 5 stages of grief in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Like he's constantly just like, whoa, whoa, yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't know. Maybe just what are your thoughts on, like, why that feels odd to me as the modern viewer? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
I guess, like, part of it is just, like, the very fast-paced nature of it. And just, like, I mean, part of it is that when you're talking about, like, older films, usually they have more expression. Like, in Silent Era, obviously very expressive.
Yeah.
And then, like, you start to be less expressive of sound because you don't need to, like, choreograph. You don't need to like tell everything through the face. You just need to like say a line. But I think also just like a lot of screwball comedies are very fast. I haven't seen a lot of them, but I've seen His Girl Friday, which is probably the fastest paced movie ever made. Just in terms of a dialogue, it's just like so rapid pace. I think just like that cramming of information so close together can be a little bit weird. I also think Cary Grant, well, partly his accent could be a little bit weird because it was his real accent, but he had like a what's it called? It's like the British American hybrid.
Oh yeah, the transatlantic
accent. Yeah, that was his. Yeah, exactly. that kind of accent is a little bit off-putting, but I think partly it's just the fast pace, and partly just like how well written it is to some degree. Like maybe too well written for some people. Not
for me.
I'm not saying you're dumb. I'm just saying like it's not. We're more used to like improvised or relatable humor, where these characters are a lot like smarter than those like modern comedy people were. So like their dialogue tends to be a lot better spoken, and that can seem a little unnatural on some level, which combined with like the fast pace can be quite strange.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I want to say, to clarify, like sometimes when you're watching like 40s movies or before, and you say like, "Oh, this was difficult for me as a modern viewer to like get on the same page with," it's like, "Oh, that something aged poorly." That's not the case here. I actually don't think there's really very much in this that aged poorly, besides the fact that the mental institution is viewed like so positively. It's like
Happydale.
Yeah, it's like a wonderful place. It's like a magical place.
It's a place that it's a place that people are actively trying to get themselves into.
Yes.
It's like, you'll be happy in Happydale. So.
But like, there's not a ton of this that I'd say has aged poorly. It's just, you feel very much that it is, I guess you sort of feel the temporality of humor a little bit while watching this. It made me realize, like, today, a lot of what I laugh at is, like, it's very surreal humor. It's, like, a lot of, like, humorous because the context is so, like, strange or unexpected, and it'll just be like, oh, that doesn't belong there. Or, like, that, or, like, just being satirically over-sincere in a scenario where, like, sincerity doesn't make sense. Like, those are the things I tended to laugh at today. And, like, watching this, I was very aware that, like, just, like, the structure of the jokes was very, very different from what we're used to, which I think gets to your point about the writing style. I'm trying to, like, I haven't really thought about it in advance, but I'm trying to, like, verbally process out what the sense of humor is. It's sort of like, I guess it's just the screwballness of it all, where it's, like, it's not surreal like a lot of modern humor is, but it is, like, absurdist. It's, like, the scenarios are all normal people in situations that are very over the top. Like, normal people acting very over the top in scenarios that might have, like, very banal or, like, negative connotations, but instead they're just giving this, like, silly, like, goofy response to things that characters in a very different movie might respond to very, like, seriously. Does that seem at all coherent?
That makes sense. I kind of get the impression that Cary Grant's characters tend to be kind of silly. I mean, not in like North by Northwest as much, but they tend to be kind of like ridiculous, like buffoons, or this like very over the top is definitely a way to describe it. I honestly think like maybe even like the jokes can be dumb in classic films, but they like the line by line, like if you look at a line, it's like very well written, and it seems like a screenwriter spent a long time doing that. I think it comes back to some degree that in some ways today, like acting tends to be better, but writing is not as much. Whereas back then, the writing was usually better, but the acting wasn't always on par. So it's kind of like flip flopped in that way. Yeah. So that might also play into it. I mean, obviously this is a black comedy, so I'll describe this as a very dark comedy. I honestly would emphasize the dark a lot in this movie, just because it's like tons of people are dead in the basement, and it's just kind of like there's almost a heaviness to that kind of humor. It's just like flaunts in the face of death so much. Yeah. More so, I would say, even than the Trouble with Harry, because both of them are about dead bodies. At least with the Trouble with Harry, it's like only one, and no one actually killed him. Yeah. So it's like, or like
spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers, I guess. Or like no one in the no one in the that you're interacting with is actually a murderer. Yeah. So like,
the Trouble with Harry. Like, the whole movie sets about to minimize the grimness of death with like almost excessively polite civility. Yeah. And which culminates in finding out that no one actually murdered Harry. He just like keeled over of his own accord. Yeah. Whereas Arsenic and Old Lace definitely doesn't in no way minimizes the horribleness of what these ants are doing, because Cary Grant's performance makes it impossible to minimize it. I mean, he experiences more emotion in 30 seconds over these murders than anyone in The Trouble with Harry does in the entire film.
Yeah, like Cary Grant is freaking out, and like he's gulping. He's like it gets to a point where he's like mouth is like he's like blabbering around for most of the beginning, and then when he finds this out, his mouth just shuts, and he's like quiet. Like it freaks him out. It like completely like it inflicts him with like an anxiety, you know. Yeah. So it definitely is not the same in that regard. Yeah. But I think what works so much about it is that I saw it kind of on a whim last year at the Alamo, because they were showing it for their film club, and it had like immaculate Halloween vibes without being a horror movie. I think that's what sold me on it, is that just how like perfect the Halloween vibes were. It's kind of like, we were talking a little bit about this, but Halloween can either have scary vibes or spooky vibes. Mm-hmm. This is firmly in the spooky vibe.
Yep.
And is very good at it. Which,
like that distinction, scary versus spooky, would you say that kind of lies in whether one chooses to treat the scariness or like the frightening and macabre elements of the holiday seriously or ironically? Is that kind of?
I think so, yeah, or at least like lightheartedly to some degree. I mean, it is lighthearted, but there's also a real heaviness to it to some degree.
Yeah.
But it definitely is it's still a comedy. And it still like has all the trappings of your favorite screwball comedies. So
yeah,
it definitely plays into that.
On that note, something I've been thinking about recently, because I've kind of realized I'm a little bit horror movied out. Like on a, not just, I actually didn't watch that many in October, but just like on a deeper level, I've realized I'm kind of just like ready to move on to something else. I watched a lot of horror, and I think something I really liked about The Trouble with Harry, and also, this is unrelated to this episode, but Fellini's Satyricon, which we watched together recently, is like, neither of those films are overtly horror films. They're not overtly treating a disturbing subject matter in a, like, this is scary and you should be scared of it kind of way. There's a level of, like, ironic remove in both films. And that actually wound up, in a way, kind of creeping me out or making me think about and engage with the macabre themes in a more effective way than a lot of overtly scary stuff does, because of that unexpected subversion. And so I really like spooky things. I think I'm actually becoming a bigger fan of spooky rather than scary, because in like Trouble with Harry, it's not like a scary film by any stretch, but like the way that the movie interacts with death is genuinely like thought-provoking and interesting in a way that like a slasher just can never be. Yeah. And some of that has to do with like the seriousness of the writing, etc. But also just the tone is a very interesting kind of, not exactly a subversion, but like the tone is interesting, right? It's like, there's this dead body and no one cares. Like,
yeah. Would you be more interested in exploring like black comedies?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Because I'm normally not a comedy guy, but I think black comedies are actually a genre that I would be very interested to explore more, just because I think I like the tone a bit more than others. So maybe that's the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, Arsenic Old Lace, if you want like a Halloween movie that is a little older or not horror, this is the perfect film.
Yeah. So. Speaking of spooky versus scary, our fourth film is The Witch from 2015, directed by Robert Eggers.
Yes.
This is a scary movie, not a spooky movie.
This is definitely on the scary end. This film I kind of am going to liken to a revisionist Thanksgiving movie.
Yeah.
In a sense, because, I mean, it doesn't have much to do with Thanksgiving other than it's about Puritans, but it shows you what Puritan life actually would have looked like on the frontier, which sucks. It's like you're constantly concerned about demons and Satan and all witchcraft and stuff like that. Plus,
starving.
Yeah, it's about a family that like was excommunicated from their church, I guess, because the parents are heretics, and so they have to like leave the town and go live near the forest. Which is mistake number one, being a heretic. Mistake number two, living next to a literal forest. But
like the gloomiest, spooky, scariest forest you've ever seen.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like a horrifying like situation to be in, especially if you have kids. This family obviously has like 4 of them, at least at the start of the movie.
What? What are you saying, John?
Yeah. I mean, technically they have 4 at the end, if you think about it in some sense.
Yeah, in some sense, in terms of their immortal souls.
Yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts about this movie. One of the reasons we picked it, though, the reason we included it in this fall list, is not simply because it's a revisionist Thanksgiving movie, but because it captures a variety of autumnalness, not sure the appropriate terminology. Yeah. It captures a very unique kind of fall vibe that I honestly think movies in particular don't do enough, which is fall after Halloween.
Yes.
Right? So November is also a fall month, and it's got the cozy side of Thanksgiving for sure, but it also has the like decay side of fall for sure. You really see that in November. It's the season of, you might get some slushy snow. There's going to be some roadkill freezing on the side of the road. It's rainy. All the pretty leaves have fallen and are starting to turn into dirt.
Yeah.
But it's not yet winter either, so you don't have the coziness of it being like overtly frosty and snowy outside.
Yeah.
It's a gross, shitty time of year in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it's completely different, in my opinion, from a Halloween vibe, which 100%. Has a lot more like whimsy to it, tends to be more spooky. This is where the death and decay of fall really starts to be noticeable, and you feel that in The Witch.
Oh, it's like the perfect late fall movie. The way I've described this to Adam is that in a lot of ways The Witch is a Western.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a Western in the sense that, say, one of James Fenimore Cooper's books were, like Last of the Mohicans, those all take place in upstate New York, which no one would set a Western in now, but in that time period that was the West. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways this is a Western, but also just like the frontier, the loneliness and isolation, and just struggling with the element is in this. But there's also, like, it's called The Witch, so there's a witchcraft element to it.
Yes.
What I like about this movie is that the film kind of toys with you about whether this is actual demonic influence or if it's all Freudian.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really get an answer until the end when it becomes more clear what's going on. But I kind of like how it just, like, plays with you for a while, or kind of, like, makes you start to think that this is a critical revisionist interpretation. I mean, it is to some degree. Like, there's obviously, like, the father's sins causing all this trouble. But it also revealed that, yeah, Satan is actually influencing them. There actually is a coven, like a coven in the forest. So they were being attacked. So that is actually what's happening. But it's also something that wouldn't have happened if they hadn't been so prideful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you say that it's both Freudian and spiritual. I think that's actually true. I think I tend to think about this and most of Egger's works in terms of the way it represents the spiritual, because it's that and his visual style are the two things I actually like the most about Eggers. Mm-hmm. I still feel, even post Nosferatu, that he's not the best at writing emotionally engaging stories. But his visual style is amazing. His sense of period is perfect. But he also, I love the fact that he tends to represent the spiritual as a real phenomenon, or at least presents it uncritically. He likes to present a period's representations of spirituality uncritically, rather than making it overtly clear from the beginning that it's all just like psychological and trying to just be like wink wink nod nod, like a witch wink wink nod nod. It's like, no, she's actually like using magical powers, like, yeah. And I think that's just something that makes this movie in particular, it's my favorite Eggers movie, and it is my favorite because he goes so far with the spirituality in this that it actually does to me become very thematically and emotionally like deep and interesting in a way that like something like Nosferatu, which looks fantastic, doesn't quite get to. Because, as you mentioned, there's a lot of really interesting themes about, like, who is the transgressor in this scenario. It's really the pride of the father that puts them in this scenario.
Yeah,
we're not given the nuances of his theological debate, but it seems clear from the little we see of him. He wants to be seen as a holy man, but his holiness is not really coming from an inward, like, love of God, and more out of a desire to literally be puritanical, to, like, literally impress people with how, like, the way he talks about the fact that they've been kicked out of their town. It's very much just like, I'm holier than all of these other people, and we have to go through this stuff because of me.
Yeah.
And I like how it's very much present, but the film is not overly explicit about it and kind of lets you draw your own conclusions about guilt and the role it plays.
Yeah, I don't think they care. I don't think Eggers cares as much about the actual theology being discussed as more he cares about, like, the behavior of the dad.
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to communicate. Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty clearly the father is the problem.
Yeah.
And he's like, eventually his wife starts to talk about wanting to go home, and he's like, okay. And then she's like, I want to go home to England. And he's like, oh my gosh. But it's, he definitely doesn't want to do that, but he's starting to get to a point where he's like losing his family.
Yeah. Based
on this like arrogance. But obviously, huge spoilers in the movie. Like, the whole family except for the main girl, played by Anya Taylor-Joy.
One of her earliest roles.
I think it's her first.
Is it really?
I think it might be her debut.
That makes sense.
The rest of the family dies. They're all fucked.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, like, it brought complete destruction on them all.
Yeah.
So and she goes to join the coven in the forest. So she's like in the hands of Satan now.
I really like how I think this movie, I've seen it twice, and I didn't see it this year, but as far as I can remember, like I think the scariness to this movie has a lot of staying power, because again, it's pretty understated, and it doesn't rely on like a lot of gore or anything like that. It's more the character of like Black Phillip, this really unsettling, often practical black goat.
Yeah.
That just is just like shot really creepily and is like creepy to be around.
Yeah. It's just a presence in the movie.
Yeah, and I don't have a ton of really thoughtful analysis of how Eggers manages to make him so creepy, but he's very creepy. It's a very spooky kind of film. Well, actually, I shouldn't say spooky because we've established that as a different kind of term.
Yeah.
It's a very unsettling film, and I really like how the supernatural elements are presented in it. Not as like it's not like a Conjuring movie where you get shredded into like a blender of demons.
No, it's not like silly in that way.
No.
It's not a silly depiction of the supernatural. It's more of like
uncanny. Maybe.
Yeah, it's uncanny, and there's a spiritual warfare element, but it's a lot more realistic in my opinion. It's more just like the father opened up this like opportunity for the devil to enter and inflict his plans on them. It's also a bit of
not a prisoner's dilemma movie exactly, but like you're stuck out here on the frontier, right?
Yeah.
With like dwindling resources, and there's a very claustrophobic element because we're very much in Anya Taylor-Joy's character's shoes, and it's like everyone in the family slowly becoming convinced that she is the reason that everything's going to shit for the family.
Yeah.
She's becoming the scapegoat for everything else, and there's a very like stressful element to that where it's like your literal family is becoming convinced that you're doing things to like that you're not to like ruin the crops and like ruin their lives.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, this is very like stressful.
Yeah, for someone who has an entire continent to flee to, it still feels claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Like she can go anywhere in North America, but it's still like at some level you can't do that. Like you can't do that.
Yeah.
It's too dangerous.
Yeah.
So yeah, very cool. Okay, so the final movie we have to discuss here, I mainly wanted to talk about this last because it's a lot nicer than the films we've talked about already. It's a lot more upbeat and optimistic. It's The Straight Story, which is directed by David Lynch, and it came out in 1999. Now, I've rewatched this somewhat recently. I rewatched this after we did our 90s video, and if I had seen it watched it again before then, I might have actually included it on that list.
Wow.
So I really enjoy this movie.
High praise.
Yeah. I think this might be the most underrated Lynch film in terms of his fan base. Like, because it got a ton of awards, but like in terms of like the actual fans, it's very under discussed. And it does make sense because it's nowhere near as dark. Like, it's not surreal, but I think it's honestly, one, it's got some of his best filmmaking, and two, the story is genuinely very touching. It's basically about this man who is very, very stubborn, and he wants to go see his brother and make up with his brother after this guy had a seizure. And he doesn't have a license, and he wants to do this journey on his own, so the only option he has at his disposal is to take his lawnmower and travel from Iowa to Wisconsin, like middle of Iowa to like the edge of Wisconsin.
Played by Richard Farnsworth.
Yep, in one of his last roles, Oscar nominated.
I believe his last role.
I'm pretty sure it was his last role. Yeah. It's based off a true story. This actually did happen. But what I like about it is that for so much of Lynch's films, and I love all the rest pretty much, is that they are basically about the good versus evil, or about how those both influence us. Whereas this one is basically just a film about the good, and is solely like focused on that. And he brings just as much like feeling to that, and just as much like beauty to that as he does to his other films.
Yeah.
And this also has good Harvest vibes, by the way.
Yes, it fits onto this list because there's a lot of that Midwestern imagery of, like wheat blowing in the breeze, and just things you would associate with late fall, sort of a farmer's market kind of an atmosphere.
Yeah, sweeping like drone shots of like the harvest, like the machines that are taking up all the crops and stuff.
Yeah,
and like crane shots and stuff.
Yeah,
very beautiful.
I really like this movie because it is that rare movie that is about forgiveness as a concept, and like not even in a like oh, is it possible to forgive kind of way. But just like, it's more about Richard Farnsworth's physical journey. It kind of just becomes like a symbol for like the internal journey that a person has to make to just get to the point where they can forgive somebody. So it's like less about, you're never really in doubt as to whether he's going to forgive his brother. It's more about seeing him pay like the physical cost of like being able to do that. And it's very much a road movie, which is fun. But it's like, yeah, it's very emotionally impactful, I think, because it's a true movie about forgiveness, which is like, it's not about his brother. It's not like about deserving it or not deserving it. It's, he wants to make peace before they both pass away because they're both very elderly. And I think that that's just like a message that's very relevant today and something that more people should see. This is, I guess, what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little hard to see, but if you have Disney Plus, you have no excuse. So that's why I saw it. So
it does have some little Lynchian touches to it. Like, there's the lady who keeps hitting the deer with her car.
Yeah, poor lady, she's like, I have to come down this road. This is the only way I get to work. This is the 8th deer I've hit this fucking month. I tried praying St. Christopher and all these other saints, everyone I could think of, and nothing works. You know,
it's just like a classic like Lynch joke setup of like something stupid happening over and over and over again.
Yeah,
which you don't actually see, but just the fact that she's hit like 8 deer in a month for no reason.
Yeah, it's like a field too. It's like there's no trees around. Like you should be able to see those deer.
You should. Yes, yeah. It's like completely flat.
Yeah,
it's a Midwestern location.
Yeah.
I also think that you can feel some connection to like Blue Velvet in that both those movies are interested in depicting the happy exterior of Americana. The difference is that this doesn't have a dark, seedy underbelly to it.
It has a little bit of one. There's one scene where the main character, Alvin, and some other guy they're at like a bar and they're talking about their experiences in World War II and how one of them was guilty of friendly fire and like tore him up. They're just like talking about how they lost all these friends and all these buddies during the Second World War, and so there's a little bit of that like there's not so much like a dark like evil side, it's more just like a sad side.
Yeah.
Also with his daughter, the daughter with like the one that Sissy Spacek plays, there's like this part where she sees like this kid playing with a ball, and it reminds her of her son who was taken away from her because she had like a drug problem or something. So there's like not so much a like evil side underneath, but there is like a sad side underneath that's still there. I really like the road trip element of this movie. I did a couple of road trips this year. A couple of them in fall. I did one to like Cumberland, Maryland, and then I did one to like the Harrisburg area, PA. And both of those were like very beautiful, especially the Cumberland, stunning fall vibes. Just like gorgeous foliage everywhere. You're cutting through like the mountains of Appalachia. Just stunning trip. And I even got my friend to play the music from this movie while doing it to add add a nice exclamation point to that trip. So like I haven't spent that much time in the Midwest. Like I don't think I've been to any of the states that they go to in this movie. Yeah. But I still like that road trip during fall. Still rings true with me.
And I think no discussion of this would be complete without just saying that like Richard Farnsworth's performance is amazing.
It's so good.
And maybe part of why it doesn't get talked about a lot with Lynch fans is that as much as there are like those Lynchian elements we just acknowledged, a lot of that gets subsumed by just how moving Farnsworth is, and Lynch has the intelligence to just step back and not block any of that with surrealist theatrics, and really just has the humility to let Farnsworth steal the movie, which I think is great. And it really sells the like just the emotional dynamic of like making peace with a loved one because you don't want to be broken off from them when you both pass away.
That's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of his best movies, masterpiece. Check it out if you can. Top 5 Lynch in my opinion.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Alright, so that's the end of the list. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Indeed. Eat heartily. Eat a lot.
And don't complain too much about politics.
Yeah.
You remember, make up with your family.
Yeah. Be like Richard Farnsworth.